The alder tree, from which our wood wasp takes its name, is easy to recognize from its heart-shaped leaves and fruits that resemble small cones. It's a tree that likes plenty of moisture and is usually found near water, growing in marshy places and beside lakes, as well as on the banks of rivers and small streams. Alder and willow are often found together. The angler, intent on his float, sees the two trees reflected in the water. Most alders are healthy and therefore free from wood wasp attack. Sometimes, however, we find alder woodland like this, where many trees are dying. Such places are the home of the alder woodwasp, whose grubs tunnel in the wood of dead and dying stems and branches. Many of the wood wasp grubs or larvae are dug out and eaten by woodpeckers, but our story tells of the 4 insect enemies that devour and kill the wood wasp. We shall see the struggle for life and death that is waged in complete darkness inside an apparently uninteresting stem of dead alder. First, we shall follow the life history of the central figure in our story, the alder woodwasp, XIPHYDRIA CAMELUS. It is June, and entering this small alder wood, where many trees are dead or dying, we see that the woodwasp is present by the small holes in this dead stem. These are exit holes by which woodwasp adults have emerged from the wood. Nearby, we find a recently wind-blown alder tree. Wood wasps are walking on the bark, and looking through a lens, we see a female. She's about 3/4 of an inch long. In midsummer, the wood wasps are busy egg-laying. When seeking a place to drill her egg shaft through the bark, the wood wasp drags the end of her body along crevices in recently dead bark. Standing trees are also used for egg-laying. In this tree, which is dying from the top downwards, we should look for wood wasp's egg-laying just above the highest green branches, where the bark is still moist. But to return to our fallen tree. The wood wasp has now lowered from its covers her egg-laying tube or ovipositor. The ovipositor is in 3 parts, each armed at the tip with cutting ridges. The 3 parts together form a tough hollow instrument which can drill through bark and lay the eggs between bark and wood. When the ovipositor is completely buried, the end of the body becomes pressed against the bark. To see what is happening, we must now carefully raise the bark on which the wood wasp is at work. The ovipositor has come through the bark and is exuding an orange secretion, which introduces fragments of fungus beneath the bark before the eggs are laid. In this dissection of a female wood wasp, we see the large gland that produces the secretion. The fungus is picked up from this structure. The fungus spreads into the wood, where it is necessary for the healthy growth of the wood wasp grub. The large white mass is the ovary, containing more than 100 eggs. The eggs, each of which has a long tail, are now about to be laid. The ovipositor gates as the main portion of the egg appears, and then the tail is worked out. The purpose of the tail is to receive the egg contents while the membrane of the egg proper passes down the narrow channel of the ovipositor. At the end of the ovipositor, we can just see the cutting ridges which drill the egg shaft. After laying a group of up to 25 eggs beneath the bark, the female withdraws her ovipositor and moves off to lay other clusters of eggs elsewhere. The egg is at first oval, but it swells as the embryo develops inside it and hatches in about 17 days. The young larva bores straight into the wood, and we now look inside the stem to follow its progress. The larva tunnels in the stem for about 11 months. At first, it bores down into the wood, packing fragments of wood tightly behind itself, but leaving an empty space at the end of its tunnel where it is working. As the larva grows, its skin becomes tight, and so at intervals it molts. It sheds its old skin, and the new and larger skin allows it to grow some more. When nearly full grown, the larva tunnels up to, but not through, the surface of the wood. The large jaws enable the woodwasp grub to bore through quite hard alder wood. Having arranged that only a cap of wood and the bark separates it from the outside, the larva retreats down its tunnel and becomes motionless. And soon the skin opens, revealing the pupa, which is equivalent to the chrysalis stage of the butterfly. The pupa quickly darkens, and after about a fortnight, the pupal skin is shed. 2 or 3 days later, the young adult begins to eat its way out through the cap of wood and bark. It takes its first look at the outside world, and then, with difficulty, struggles out through the circular exit hole that it has gnawed. After a good clean, to remove pieces of wood dust, the young adult roams the bark, and it's there that the males meet the females and mating takes place. Once they are fertilized, the females begin to drill egg shafts and lay their eggs. Here is a daughter of the first female that we saw, and it takes 1 year to complete this cycle. We shall now see the 4 insect parasites that live at the expense of the woodwasp, starting with Aulicus striatus, which lays her egg inside the woodwasp egg. Aulicus striatus had not been found in Britain for many years, until it was recently obtained from dead alder in the grounds of Linford Hall in Norfolk. We find Aulicus adults in June and July, when the woodwasps are egg-laying. There is a female Aulicus walking past a woodwasp. A male approaches and briefly performs his dance of courtship before mating. After mating, the female is ready to lay her eggs. In order to do this, she has to find the egg shaft of a woodwasp. She carefully explores with her feelers all likely cracks and crevices in the bark. You will remember that it is in such places that the woodwasps drill their egg shafts. When she finds the woodwasp egg shaft, she removes her ovipositor from its protective covers and inserts it down the shaft. The structures sticking up in the air are the covers of the ovipositor. The ovipositor itself is being worked down to the woodwasp eggs beneath the bark. Notice how the body of the insect contracts while this is happening. We see that the ovipositor is held between the hind legs for support. The body twists and turns as the ovipositor is maneuvered in different directions to find the woodwasp eggs at the end of the egg shaft. Looking beneath the bark, we see the Orlicus ovipositor probing among a cluster of eggs. Orlicus pushes her ovipositor into a wood wasp egg and lays her own egg inside it. She does this to as many eggs as she can reach. Then she withdraws from the wood wasp egg shaft and moves off to continue her search for other groups of eggs. Those wood wasp eggs with small black marks have been pierced by the ovipositor of Orlicus and will each contain an Orlicus egg. When one of these parasitized eggs hatches, the wood wasp larva contains a young Orlicus larva. In this preparation we can see the small parasite inside its victim. Nevertheless, the wood wasp feeds and grows, and of course Orlicus feeds and grows too, but not until a year has passed and the wood wasp has tunneled up to the surface does the Orlicus grub finally kill the wood wasp by feeding on its vital organs. The full-grown Orlicus larva now bursts its way out from what is left of the wood wasp. Having rid itself of the wood wasp's skin, the Orlicus larva spins a cocoon with silk extruded from the end of its body. The cocoon, at first pale, soon turns a reddish-brown color. Opening it, we can follow the darkening of the pupa. The pupal stage lasts about 2 weeks, and in order to escape, the young adult has only to gnaw an exit hole through the cap of wood left by its victim. It is once more June or July, and the wood wasps are laying their eggs. But now we know that some of those eggs will produce eventually not wood wasps, but Orlicus. In May, before the wood wasps have emerged, we find our second parasite, Ricella curvipes, flying up and down wood wasp-attacked stems. The long ovipositor shows that this is a female. At intervals she alights and taps the bark with her feelers. She's seeking to locate a wood wasp larva or pupa in the wood below. Having in some mysterious way pinpointed a wood wasp grub which may be separated from her by 3/4 of an inch of wood, Ricella raises her body and, standing on tiptoe, brings forward the long needle-like ovipositor. The ovipositor is a remarkable instrument. We see it here removed from its covers. An enlarged view of the end shows that it is in 3 parts, each armed at the tip with cutting ridges. The 2 covers are now indicated. They protect the ovipositor when it's not in use and support it when it's at work. Ricella is drilling a shaft through bark and wood to reach a wood wasp larva. The covers are pressed close to the underside of the body and support the ovipositor to where it enters the bark. There is the unsuspecting target. As Ricella progresses with her drilling, the ovipositor covers, which don't enter the shaft, are bent up and back, while the ovipositor itself sinks ever deeper into the wood. Now the ovipositor has come through into the wood wasp tunnel, and the end of the Ricella body is right down on the bark, showing that the ovipositor is completely buried in the wood. At this stage, Ricella stings and paralyzes the wood wasp. Before the egg is laid, let us look at a cross-section of the ovipositor to see the very small channel down which the egg has to pass. A rocking motion shows that Ricella is now ready to lay her egg. Like the wood wasp egg, the Ricella egg has a long tail, but in this case the tail emerges first. Finally, there appears the main portion in which the embryo will form. The egg is laid on or near the wood wasp grub, which, being paralyzed, cannot move and crush it. Her object achieved, Ricella now works her ovipositor out of the egg shaft and flexes her body before continuing her search. The Ricella egg hatches in 2 days, and the parasite larva feeds on the surface of the woodwasp. Born into the midst of plenty, it grows rapidly, and in 16 days has consumed the woodwasp entirely. The full-grown Ricella larva remains in the woodwasp tunnel throughout the winter. Next spring it pupates, and about a fortnight later, during early May, the young adult eats its way out through the wood. This is a female emerging. The males, which are the smaller sex, wait around on bark where females are coming out, and mating then takes place. That completes the life history of Ricella CAMELUS. Our third parasite, PSEUDORHYSSA ALPESTRIS, greatly resembles Ricella in size and shape. Often, when Ricella is drilling her egg shaft, we find one or more PSEUDORHYSSA females standing nearby, watching but not interfering. When Ricella has laid her egg and departed, PSEUDORHYSSA moves in and searches with her feelers for the Ricella egg shaft. Having found it, she raises her body and inserts her ovipositor down the Ricella shaft. This is quite easy, because PSEUDORHYSSA has a thinner ovipositor, seen on the left, compared with that of Ricella on the right. The egg shaft of Ricella leads, of course, to a woodwasp larva or pupa on which there is already a Ricella egg. PSEUDORHYSSA thus makes use of Ricella to get her egg onto the woodwasp. Notice how the covers are bent back out of the way, leaving the ovipositor quite unsupported, presumably because PSEUDORHYSSA does no drilling. The ovipositor quickly penetrates the Ricella egg shaft and enters the woodwasp tunnel. Now the egg is about to be laid. PSEUDORHYSSA is yet another insect whose egg has a long tail, and, as with Ricella, the tail emerges first. The tail is necessary because the egg is much larger than the channel of the ovipositor. To reduce the diameter of the egg proper, the fluid contents flow into the tail as soon as the tail begins to leave the ovipositor. After the complete egg is laid, we see the tail shrinking as the contents flow back again. Now we have a Ricella and PSEUDORHYSSA egg on the same woodwasp larva. The female PSEUDORHYSSA withdraws and cleans herself before searching for more Ricella egg shafts. Both parasite eggs hatch in 2 days. The PSEUDORHYSSA larva has a large brown head and very large jaws. When the two larvae meet, PSEUDORHYSSA seizes Ricella and squeezes it to death. Now PSEUDORHYSSA has the woodwasp to itself, and it feeds rapidly and is full grown in 3 weeks. Pupation takes place the following spring, and the young PSEUDORHYSSA adult comes out at the same time as the Ricella females are emerging, that is, in May. Only by this careful timing can PSEUDORHYSSA make use of Ricella. The last parasite in our woodwasp story is the XIPHYDRIA myarinkii, a small calcid wasp only 1/8 of an inch long. Sometimes, in dead alder from which wood wasps had recently emerged, we found groups of very small larvae deep in the wood, in tunnels which should have contained wood wasp grubs. This was a puzzling discovery. How had they got there? Holes through the tightly packed wood dust of some wood wasp tunnels gave the first clue. We shall now see how the little calcid wasp, here sitting on an acorn, manages to lay her eggs on the wood wasp larva when it is still beyond the reach of the long ovipositor of Russella. When the young calcids emerge in July and August, they walk around on the bark of dead wood wasp-attacked alder, and it's then that mating takes place. The male vibrates his wings and taps the female on the head with his feelers. If she is not receptive, he goes through his routine again. After mating, the female disappears. She enters an old wood wasp exit hole and burrows down through the wood dust. Fragments of wood accumulate at the entrance to the tunnel as the calcid pushes out the products of her burrowing. Thus the calcid makes her way down an unoccupied wood wasp tunnel until she is near a wood wasp larva in the surrounding wood. To reach her victim, she must now burrow through the solid wood. She keeps her route clear by continuing to throw out all boring products. At last, the little calcid breaks through into the occupied tunnel. She quietens the wood wasp by stinging it and lays up to 30 eggs on its body. Her work done, she retraces her path to the outside. The newly hatched calcid larvae are minute, but they grow quickly, feeding in a group on the surface of the wood wasp. Within 2 weeks, only the head and skin of the wood wasp remain. The larvae overwinter and pupate in the following summer. The pupae quickly darken, and, in due course, the young adults escape to the outside by the route so carefully prepared by their mother. And so we have seen that the wood wasp is attacked by insect enemies in all stages of its development inside the dead alder stem. The eggs may be parasitized by Orlicus. The full-grown larvae and pupae near the surface may be reached by Russella and PSEUDORHYSSA, and even larvae at depth in the wood are not safe from the little calcid. Nevertheless, many wood wasps emerge successfully, for nature keeps a balance between the enemies and their prey.